What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late-night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Amoda, who is a contemporary spiritual teacher and author. Her teachings arises out of direct experience of awakened awareness and emanates the untamable fragrance of freedom whilst radically embracing the mystery and mess of human existence. Her invitation is for you to open to the fullness of life, to say yes to the totality of your experience, and to meet reality with radical compassion. She joins me today to discuss her latest book, Radical Awakening. Amoda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin.
Amoda, I've been obviously reading your book as well, and it's called Radical Awakening. We'll just put up on the screen now. Why Radical Awakening? What was the purpose behind this book?
I can't say it had a purpose, not a conscious purpose. It really just birthed itself through me at that time. It was shortly, well, not so shortly, it was a few years after the awakening that I describe in the book. And it was just a very pregnant time for me, and I needed to write it, to speak it.
Okay, yeah, because you do talk about in the book how this book sort of came through you. Where did the information come from?
Well, it's not information in the sense of knowledge or anything that's been learnt. It's a direct experience of awakening out of the dream of separation, which again I describe at the beginning of the book. I guess something that was growing in me over many years, in terms of that awakeness revealing itself, it finally kind of popped. And out of that came a certain insight and wisdom, I guess. Of course, I do have a background in many different modalities, so then the words that express that are going to be influenced by that as well.
Of course, yeah, they're all going to be filtered by yourself.
Yeah.
So, right, so not one word in there is from something else. It's all from your journey, full stop.
Absolutely, yes. I kind of weave together what I see as reality. And I have to say that, I mean, that book was essentially first written 10 years ago. So what we're speaking of with Radical Awakening is a revised edition. It's revised because I speak more about my own personal journey, how it came about. And I've made some changes to the text throughout, and certainly at the beginning and towards the end, to bring it into alignment with how I speak and teach now. And that's important. I just feel that's important to say, because something has evolved since then. So even though I point to the same truth, I have in some ways refined and made perhaps more delicate or dissecting some of the insights that I bring in this book.
Okay.
That doesn't detract from its truth.
No, absolutely not. What would you say your purpose is then?
Today? I mean, now is...
Well, you are very much in the now, but if you sum up what you do, and that does take us into tomorrow as well, and the day after, can you if you was to, someone wants to come up to you and and try to figure you out, what is it you do?
Well, that's a hard job to figure me out. But all joking aside, my purpose of my life is given to awakeness, however that moves through me. And that's not to be cryptic, but to be very honest in how it moves through me. I don't have a goal. I didn't set out to do this. I didn't set out to be a speaker or a teacher or a spiritual teacher, or to impart any insight or wisdom. I'm really following a deep inner impulse that moves through me. And for a long time that didn't move, or it moved in a more subtle inward way, and it didn't move in an external way. And now it moves like a raging fire through me. And so I have no choice in that sense. On the surface, from the outside, it might look like my purpose is to be a spiritual teacher or a public speaker or an author. But they're the manifestations of something much deeper that I can't really compartmentalize and say, well, it's this or this or this. It's just what moves through me.
Okay, right. So someone coming to this video that has never had an awoken experience, never really, looked into spirituality, has come across this video by mistake. Can you see how confusing it is for them to what I'm trying to get to, what it is you do?
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's two things in what you're saying there. To focus a message across, if you like, I would say I point to freedom, liberation from egoic self. So if somebody stumbled across this video by accident, and that particular phrase, let's say, speaks to them because there is personal suffering or psychological suffering, or simply the yearning to discover a deeper truth than the surface reality, or the conditioned reality, then that will speak to somebody about pointing to freedom, to personal liberation.
Yeah, freedom from egoic self. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then there's something else which I find very interesting in what you're saying, which is about possibly somebody being confused. And yes, the words that speak or the words that are spoken are very often very confusing, because when heard from the linear mind, the egoic mind, they're contradictory. All truth is paradoxical. So when I speak, or you could say when I teach, although that's not quite the right word, but when I speak or dialogue with people, it's not purposefully confusing, but words are only pointers. So there's nothing being imparted in terms of information or knowledge, although it might appear as such. The words are really nudges to something much vaster and without boundaries than what the mind would like to create for safety. So that's how we point to freedom through the spoken word.
Okay. So, trying to sum you up then, your work is all about finding a greater sense of peace within throughout your daily life, and, as you say, freedom from egoic self. What else could we add there as well?
I'll add to what you just said. It's about knowing yourself as peace in the midst of all circumstances, including the biggest storm, including the darkest places. It's about finding freedom from getting caught up in the changing nature of life, which is always up and down, dark and light, pleasant and unpleasant. Yeah. So it's finding freedom from that duality of life.
Yep. Absolutely, and that those darkness could be a loved one that's not very well right now. It could be family issues from the past that have never been healed. It could
Absolutely.
be self-love towards yourself, or forgiveness to things that you've done that seem so terrible. It could be a lot of these things that cause us to be out of balance. Yes. And living in that pain sometimes. But then some people would watch this and they could say, well, my life's fantastic. I don't need any of this. My life's great.
Well, if that's the case, and I sometimes do have people say that, well, I don't have any traumas, or I don't have any dark places, and I'm really enjoying life and on purpose, etc., etc. Well, if that's the case, there are two answers to that. One is fantastic. Go on your journey. Then you don't need to hear this. And the other one is, let's be radically honest here. Let's be really honest. Are you willing to dive into a more tender and vulnerable and open space within yourself, where any attachment to the surface reality, even the fantastic surface reality, can be seen through, because there's a deeper peace within that?
Well, I have to say, I don't know one person that I've come across recently. And if I was to name most people in my life, I mean, nearly everyone, I think, I don't know one of them that has not got major problems in some way or another. And that includes myself, major issues in a lot of ways. So I don't see any life being that way. But I just, you do get these people.
Yeah, and very often that's a kind of cover up for a deeper wound. And it doesn't have to be a personal wound. It doesn't have to be something really dreadful that's happened in your life, because some people may have had a more privileged life, if you like, or a more lucky life, or a more supportive life, or a more loved life, at least in this incarnation. But there's always something deeper than that. There's an impersonal wound, and the impersonal wound is very subtle, but very profound. And it may not be touched in this lifetime, but there comes a point in, if you like, the soul's journey where there's a need to meet that deeper wound, and that's the wound of separation. The wound of separation that is universal, and that really we could look at it from the point of view of being born out of the womb. There's an essential primary separation that happens as we leave the oceanic consciousness or oneness of the womb and separate from that into an individuated form out in the world, and that's a primary wound. It's also, if we go deeper than that and further than that, the primary wound of spirit descending into form, consciousness descending into a body.
Yeah, and I think whenever that's going to happen, you're going to leave the natural state of who you truly are, and you're going to come into issues that we've just spoken of, and the pain that kind of separation has. But it's nothing that we didn't ask for. We probably chose to come here to have this experience. It must be very important to go through these things.
Well, consciousness gets to know itself through the act of separation and then reunification. That doesn't make it any easier or less painful on a personal level. No,
and for some people that will listen to this, they may not have a Scooby-Doo what we're talking about, but I think for some of the words that we're using, so I think in that case, what we are trying to say as well, I think, is by exploring some of these ideas that we're going to talk about now, that they're even if you don't have the same truths, they seem to be universal. Some of the things we're about to discuss as well.
Yes. I'm really speaking. Let's just get this in some way straight. I'm really speaking to the spiritual seeker, the already spiritual seeker. Yeah. I'm not trying to convince anyone. It's not a theory. It's not a method. It's not saying, oh, well, this is the way to go in life. Absolutely not. It's really speaking to those people who are already seeking a deeper truth, who are already seeking liberation from suffering, or liberation from duality, or liberation from that deeper wound of separation. I'm speaking to the seeker, yeah, who's already asking these questions, yeah, and then the words can actually touch that place that is inquiring, that is investigating. If there's no investigation or no inquiry, and life is the trajectory of life is in a different direction, there's no need to convince or pull into this conversation.
No.
And I kind of think that's important to say, because it's not about imposing a spiritual ideology on anybody whatsoever.
No, absolutely not. This has been your journey. This has been your personal journey. And from that, these are the truths for yourself that have worked for you. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. And there is a spiritual inquiry that is happening on a global level, and has done for ages, that speaks to the same truth.
Well, there is, but then, there are also a lot of people that are into religion as well, and that speaks a different truth. Does it not? Yes.
I'm talking about inquiry. Religion isn't inquiry. Religion is an ideology that's a set of rules.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I'm so glad as a soul.
Investigation.
Yeah, and I'm so glad as a soul I chose not to have any of that. I'm so grateful in this life I chose not to have to go through that experience. Maybe again. So, but sometimes, all paths are just as difficult.
All paths hold treasure in them, even if the treasure is one of disappointment or disillusionment. That's why I say it's not about imposing a belief or a way on anyone. It's waiting till the true inquiry comes from within,
yeah,
and then pointing to that in clarity when that arrives.
I used to say, and I find it, I struggle right now to see the truths or to see the treasures in some religions. I struggle. I used to say, oh yes, there is love in some religions, and there is, but I still struggle right now to really embrace that. So
I think by saying that, what I meant was not so much that there's a truth in what they are imparting as their ideology. I'm talking about the truth that can be discovered by the individual who goes on that journey.
Oh, yeah.
Of handing over their authority to religion,
yep.
And then at some point, if they're lucky, being disillusioned by that and taking that authority back and going within rather than outside of themselves, that is a treasure.
Yeah.
They've gone down a path, they've become disillusioned, and perhaps that's cracked open something that reveals the inner light, which is what they were seeking anyway, the Christ light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't, yeah. And it must be very, 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 very important for the soul to have that experience. So I don't take anything away from what the soul knows best.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for me to sit here and say how bad it is, but at a greater level than this awareness that we have right now, it's so important.
Yes.
So that's and that's just coming to that wrong or right again. Well, from a different perspective, there is nothing wrong or right probably. It's just how much do you want to keep hurting yourself, and others. And sometimes, I come across people where, I said earlier on, just there, I said about, in my life, I couldn't name one person that didn't have issues. And I was thinking there, as you were speaking, I was like, oh Christ, is that the people I'm attracting? But no, I don't think it is. I think it's just a natural effect. That's my truth of coming here and being in this reality. But that I do meet a few people who are so, never want to talk about anything that's troubling them in their life. It's always about positive, which is great. But when you mention something where it's, yes, this side's positive, but this side isn't so good, they don't want to talk about it then. And it's like, oh, you're living in a cloud cuckoo. You're living in everything's just fantastic. You don't never want to look at anything that's issues in your life then, do you?
Yes, that happens. And then at some point, the inevitability of the body's deterioration and death itself has to be faced. And then that deeper wound, which is universal and part of the human experience, will have to be met, or not. And then there's a struggle against the death process. But liberation will not be available unless everything is faced.
Yeah, but sometimes these people can be highly influential people with lots of massive followings as well.
You mean the positive thinking teachers?
Well, the over positive thinking where they never want to just look at anything that's negative. When you do talk about something that's not so great, it's not to be talked about.
Sure. Well.
God damn this world. Right.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm just joking. It's nice to chat to you about this. Okay, well, look, we're 19 minutes in and so much to talk about. Okay, well, you've had your dark night of the soul. There's many interviews that you've done where you talk about your journey and you've had mystical experiences. You've even had an out-of-body experience as well, haven't you?
A very long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. But you've had
in the early stages.
Yep.
Yeah.
Suicide attempts, homelessness. You've experienced the whole thing, the whole plateau. You've had it. So I will link previous videos you've done with other people where they can, if they want to know the background to yourself or some more detail, then they can do. But I think we're just going to run out of time if we cover too much. Okay. Well, there's lots of great quotes in your book as well. Now, again, when we talk about freedom from egoic self and getting into stillness is part of the dissolving of the egoic self, would you say?
Getting into stillness. I'd say it's about discovering the stillness that's already here within.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, discovering the stillness. And that comes about by giving attention, or rather turning the attention away from the horizontal movement of mind. Well, first of all, noticing that the mind is always moving in a horizontal fashion. It's either moving towards something or moving away from something. It's either grasping onto the experience because it likes it and wants to hold on to it, or it's moving away from the experience because it doesn't like it. That's the duality, the internal duality, liking and disliking, grasping and rejecting or resisting. That's ego's movement. First of all, to notice that. When that's noticed, it's then making a choice not from the mind, because the mind can't choose consciously, but from a deeper beingness, to turn within, to give attention not to the movement, not to the waves on the surface, but to the ocean within, which is simply this eternal moment that is here. That's stillness. Yeah.
Yes. Do you think that stillness is a glimpse of a portion of who our true nature of who we are as consciousness and as a soul? Absolutely.
Yes. That's what is meant by find out who you are. Yeah. Rest in who you really are, not as a personality, not as an image of yourself, not in that way. Very often these days people talk about being who you are, and what they're meaning is like being your best personality self, discovering your creativity or writing a book or expressing yourself freely. I'm not talking of that. Being who you really are, discovering who you really are, is discovering your essential nature, your natural state as consciousness.
See, I think I think a lot of these gosh, what would you call them? The best you and the motivational stuff. I think it misses this as a core principle.
Absolutely. The current trend, it's not so current, it's been around for years, for self-improvement, self-development, self-empowerment, all part of the human potential movement, which is fantastic since it's sort of emerged in the 50s or 60s. Fantastic growth of human consciousness and awareness, but it has become hijacked by the ego. It's become hijacked by the spiritual ego that then holds on to that positive image of self, the best you, who you really are, etc. And that is a very subtle veneer that hides a deeper truth, the truth of you as nothing, as emptiness, as consciousness. And so it kind of stops at a certain point, and then it's very tempting and attractive to jump onto that and to cling to that as a sense of identity, this positive self-image, this spiritual self-image. And that's not true spiritual inquiry. That's not freedom. That's adding another layer to the conditioned self. It might be a positive one. It might be a very good one or joyful one or pleasurable one or fulfilling one.
Yeah. But
there's still something that is not free in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. How do you go about your normal life then, in a sense? Is it any different to any of us? I mean, is it? I mean, I'm sort of giggling there in a sense. But is it? How do you deal with people? How do you just deal with normal people out there, in a sense? I mean, you're not ignoring anything. You're not keeping yourself tucked away and living in some, home somewhere and not going out. I mean, you're part of society, yeah. But
just.
That's a great answer.
It's a very good question, Kevin, and probably an interesting one. Let's say I do not hide from the world because I am the world. There is no separation between me and the world. There is no need to protect myself or hide from anything. There's no big bad world out there that is doing anything to me. There's a true communion with everything that exists, every manifestation. That includes the world, that includes society, that includes nature, that includes other people. In that sense, everything is seen as consciousness and as the I that truly knows itself. There's no separation in that. Having said that, there is, on a very human, everyday level, a natural tendency for stillness, silence, and not getting lost or caught up in the mayhem of unconscious everyday life, when it's unconscious, when it's conditioned. I prefer that word than unconscious. That's loaded. But when it's conditioned, I don't hide, but I prefer my own company. I don't need to find solace or comfort or security or pleasure in anything outside of myself, because I am the totality. It's all here. There is nothing more to seek. So in that sense, my life can be very simple and in some ways more solitary than a lot of people, and there's no sense of being a victim in that. It's absolutely glorious and beautiful. I live in my own inner sanctuary. Having said that, I still operate in the world. I have to travel, I have to teach, I have to speak, I have to get on a train, or I have to get in a car.
Yep.
I do have a beloved, a husband, and so we interact. I do go shopping, I do buy clothes, I do all the normal things of life, but they're not, there's no seeking in that. There's no gain in that. And there's no loss in that. So it has a very different quality inside. On the surface, it may look very ordinary, and it is very ordinary because it's just natural. But actually, the dimension within which it operates, or from which it operates, is radically different to the conditioned way of living. And I know that because I can look back at my life, and sometimes I get the sense that nothing has changed. I'm like, well, what actually has changed? Has anything happened? Am I more mystical? Am I more spiritual? Am I more enlightened? Am I more special? Am I more blissful? And I could say no. Well, I am more enlightened, I can say that, but I'm certainly not more special, or even blissful. But, and neither is my life more special or blissful. But whilst nothing has changed and life is very ordinary, it is radically different. Radically different. There is clarity, and let's say beyond clarity, a better way of describing it, there is no separation. It's as if I'm permeable. It's as if I'm transparent. So everything flows through, and that is grace, and that is freedom, so that whatever happens, it simply moves through this open vehicle. And that's very different to the normal state of consciousness that is very self-protective, very putting on of a mask or a block or a wall or a protection, and then lives in this kind of constant push and pull, which is what duality is. I'm living in non-duality. There is no duality. Yes, I have likes. Yes, I have dislikes. But they're not turned into opinions. They're not turned into a fight. They're not turned into protectionism and all of this. Yeah, I think you get the gist of it.
Yep. Yeah. So okay. So I've just gone back into business. I'm just setting up a business, and I'm working with a business partner, and he's not into any of these subjects at all. And I take, I have two lives. One is this now, is this show, and two will soon be this other business, which will soon flourish to other trading companies that I'm going to have as well. So I'm really going to be out there, and I'm not, I'm going to be in this place where I've don't always understand, but it's almost there's a lot of ego out there in this environment, but it's testing. It definitely is testing, and it must be testing for you sometimes. Really, what does this information that we're talking about now do for me in that day-to-day situation? Just lets me see it from a different perspective as truth, that as you say, you don't take it with you what's happening, and you just see it as it's just, well, I see it probably just as a test. I don't really try to really go into it any deeper than that, because it just becomes too complicated.
the primary purpose of your life, or anybody's life, but your life, since we're having this dialogue, the primary purpose of your life, whether it looks on the surface as you setting up a business or a this or a that or whatever it is that you're doing, your primary purpose is to give your allegiance, your devotion to the light within you.
Purpose.
That's your purpose. That's your real purpose. What you do on the surface is irrelevant.
Yeah. So is that the same, the light within you, is that the same as doing what you love?
Not necessarily.
Then what is the light within you?
What you love will arise out of being rooted in the light within you. Now, that's your primary purpose. Your first job is to always be rooted in the light or the wholeness of your inner beingness, which is consciousness. Yeah. Not identification with this or that. That's your primary purpose. From that place, when you keep giving your allegiance, your devotion to that primary purpose, what you do will come from that place. And like you said, or one expression of it or interpretation is that the world will then test you. What it tests is whether you waver from that inner allegiance to truth, to wholeness, to your innate nature as consciousness, as light. Do you waver? Because the world's purpose is to, you could say, test you. It's to reveal in you what is still in division, what is still divided within you. You could say what is still egoic within you. So then other people's egos, which manifest through business and corporations and the marketplace and anything that you interact with in the world, because it still operates in division, its purpose is to be a mirror to that. Yeah? That's how beautiful it is. That's why in some ways the world isn't bad. It's there as your teacher, as your mirror, as the strengthening of your resolve to stay in the light.
Yeah.
If you do, then your outer interactions will inevitably reflect that light. Either the ones that can't meet that light will fall away. They won't be juicy anymore for you. They won't move you anymore. Or they will also elevate into the light.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, who knows? That is probably the latter one. I think definitely more. If you're going to be a light to other people, I'm sure that has an effect at some point. I just think I like business. You know, does it matter what business it is? Well, a little bit, but I mean, when I try to go deep into, oh my God, is this my passion? Am I so in love with this? Is this really what I want to do? Well, to be honest with you, I'm doing it because I need to make some money, and it's one thing I would enjoy doing to make some money. That's it. I ain't going any deeper than that, because it just, there isn't nothing to it more than that.
Great. That's very honest. That's very clear. And it doesn't have to be anything spiritual or worthy in the eyes of others.
No.
It's really bringing your light to whatever you do, because it moves you. Right now, it moves you. And that in itself is a transformative quality of that which you do. You can transform business simply through the clarity of that, or the honesty of that light. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I hope that, you know, I'm only saying this as an example for other people who will be watching this, and they'll be like, well, I can relate something to that. Okay, that makes a bit of sense.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with money and business. All of it is part of the divine plan.
Well, to be honest, the only reason I want more money is because I don't want to experience being too poor. I've no need to do that to myself. And secondly, I actually want to do something bigger with it in the future. I want to do a spiritual TV network. And I think, well, the only way to do that, rather than carry on with even trying to get donations to make that work is to set something up yourself. We don't need to worry about other people donating. You know, you can put this money into what you want to do, and that's yeah.
Money is an energy to be used. That's all it is. It's a transaction. How we use it is what makes all the difference.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you. But then you find yourself tested, obviously.
In which ways?
Sorry, in respects of, but just being out there in the world and doing your thing, you're still tested.
I'm not sure if I see it as tested anymore.
Okay.
I used to.
See, sorry, let me just back up. Tested as in that there's some goddamn test that we've got to achieve it. No, I don't mean it like that. I mean just a natural reaction of being, you know, here in this reality, I suppose.
Again, I'll repeat what I said. I used to.
Okay.
Because I still had a layer of defense that needed to protect itself or justify itself or felt judged. That was my big thing. I used to feel very judged. And that would really hurt, or misunderstood, and that would really hurt. And gradually over the years, these more subtle defensive layers seem to have dissolved. Now, I don't know, maybe at some point somebody will judge me so harshly that that will impact me, but I don't sense that anymore. I have an openness that allows whatever it is to be moved and revealed without concern as to what the world might think or do. Perhaps there's ever more subtle layers with that. I don't know, but I don't feel anymore that kind of harshness of the world.
Okay, now we've been sort of on the thread of freedom from egoic self. And you there was one quote in your book about the illusion of a perfect life. And what do you think that illusion could be, if I can put it into a question? I don't know if that's the right question, but really it's just to talk about the illusion of a perfect life.
I think that's going back to what you said earlier about this whole positive thinking movement. We're kind of led to believe somehow that if we're good enough or worthy enough, then our life will be somehow perfect, and that perfection is only in the eyes of the beholder. That perfection might mean having the security of a big house and a good income, or it might be the perfection of living your passion and offering that to the world, or being creative, or whatever it might be, or having the perfect relationship. And I think that's a very persistent myth or illusion that's perpetuated through religion, through our personal conditioning, that if you're good enough, you're going to get all the good things in life, that if you're good enough or worthy enough, you're going to get to heaven, and all this. And I think it's a very subtle but persistent form of conditioning that each of us carries. Maybe it comes from the Christian conditioning. Maybe it's much deeper than that. It's probably got many sources, but it's certainly been hijacked by the positive self-empowerment movement and the New Age movement that says that we're going to all ascend to a better world. So there's always this kind of hope or dream of utopia. And in that, the illusion of that is that it means that we can never really rest in the now. It means that there's no freedom because we're still moving towards hope. Hope moves us towards a better future.
You're right.
Better future never comes.
You're so
and even
right.
if it does, even if you do achieve certain dreams or ideas of a better life or a perfect life, life shows or experience shows that they're never as satisfying as they seem. They don't bring freedom. They don't bring ultimate fulfillment. And what you gain, you always lose. Now, that's not to be pessimistic or nihilistic, but that's the truth of life. Life is wavy in its nature. Everything comes, everything goes. There's an ebb and a flow, an up and a down, a rise and a fall. a birth and a death, that's the Tao of life. Until we really recognize that, we can't discover something more true than that, which is where real fulfillment lies.
But surely in that space of, gosh, what is this space? In that space of getting back to the consciousness of what we truly are, in this stillness, really knowing who we are. When you lose someone, you're still going to go through the pain. It's not taking pain away, is it?
No, it's not taking pain away. Loss is here to be fully met.
Yeah.
So then the question might come, well, what's the point of this deeper journey of discovery of an inner dimension of consciousness if the pain's still there? Well, the pain is there and the loss is there and the heartbreak is there. But what changes, and this is important if true freedom and fulfillment are what we desire, what changes is that the story around it is no longer there. The story is one of being a victim. Poor me, this shouldn't have happened to me. Poor me, I'm being punished by life, by God. Why me? And all this stuff, which is where the real suffering is. The drama, the real, the real agony, yeah? The real drama, the real story, that's where the suffering of life is. And there's no freedom in that. There's no fulfillment in that. There's no resolve in that. There's no peace in that. And it becomes a habitual reaction, this victim consciousness. That's where real suffering is. You can meet loss without a story. You can be heartbroken without a story. And there is love in that. It breaks the heart open. It breaks it open wider so that you discover that nothing essentially is lost. Nothing real is lost. Consciousness, love, true peace cannot be lost. True light cannot be lost. So even though it's painful, it busts you open, and there's an openness, a vulnerability, a tenderness, an intimacy that at the same time is so vibrant with the essence of light, love, whatever you want to call it, that it's also beautiful, and it gives life a richness, a depth, a profundity, and a fulfillment, even in death, even in loss.
Is this the same type of work as what Eckhart Tolle speaks about as well? Or the work's the wrong word, but the understanding, the truth that Eckhart Tolle speaks about.
Yes. It's the same. It's pointing to the same truth. And so does Byron Katie.
Oh, a lot of them do. A lot of them, yeah.
All the
a lot.
masters or teachers. Yeah.
It's
pointing to the inner dimension of being where true fulfillment lies. We could call it God, although that's a loaded word. We can call it the light, but then that's hijacked by the whole New Age movement. We can call it beingness. We can call it the now. We can call it freedom. We can call it consciousness. It doesn't matter what we call it. It's nameless.
So to re-remind us then, because it's always good to have a re-reminder, when we see ourselves in our truth, if our truth is, because we're not here to, like as we said at the beginning of this conversation, we're not here to, you've got to come up with this truth yourself. If our truth is that we are a soul, that we've come here to have an experience, that true nature of our soul is probably bliss, it's silence, it's love, it's everything that's just really good, because that's who we truly are, as far as we're aware. I hope we are. Well, that feels the better place to come from. That feels more loving, that space does. And we're saying, to find that space, we can go through meditation to find that. But what we're actually really saying as well is that space is the key to unlock a more contented, in the moment, great experience compared to what maybe we have been experiencing. And no matter what anyone does to us, no matter what life tracks at us, we can come back to that space when we're ready, and knowing who we truly are will allow us to have balance. Am I getting it? Am I on the same path? Or it's difficult to explain, isn't it? Because I'm suffering in my life right now. So I'm not completely there all the time.
I would say that you don't go necessarily looking for that place, or looking for peace and balance and love and all the qualities of the soul that you just described. You don't go looking for them. You discover what remains when everything that you think you are is surrendered, is given up, is no longer grasped onto. It's like a stripping away rather than an adding of something.
Okay, that's a really important word you said there, which is the word surrender. When you just surrender it, whatever, right? Really, in that sense, that's the way I would do it, but it might not be the way you do it, that's fine. And that whatever is in this moment right now just is.
Yeah.
Just
surrender
is.
Everything. Surrender your hopes, surrender your nightmares, surrender your dreams, surrender your clinging,
your jealousy,
your everything
your anger.
Just in this moment, surrender it. You might not know how, because the mind can't surrender. It doesn't do it. It can't do it. It's a letting go that is not of the mind, but of the being. And in that surrender, even if it's the willingness to surrender, even if it's a tiny little speck of surrender, is enough to drop into what is here. And what is here is unknown. It's not about knowing what's here, as bliss, as light, as love. You don't know. It's like being an open inquiry in each moment. Rest in the unknown, open to the unknown, and discover what remains when everything that you think you are, or think you want, or think you don't want, is surrendered, is given away, is let go of. Discover. Only the discovery of your true nature as light, as love, if that's what the discovery is, but I don't want to put that into the pot. I'd rather take it out and allow the discovery to be a very open, honest inquiry or discovery. Discover what is here, and then you can talk about it, and then you can describe it.
So we're not saying, okay, don't have goals, because as a business person, I've got a few goals. I want to do this, this, and this. But what I could add to that is that it does not matter what happens with that, or if it ever happens, but yes, I'd like to do it, and I can set forth my intention to do it, because if I don't go out there and use my legs and hands to walk forward, it's never going to happen, right? But with no expectation of the results.
Yes, that's it. It's not like we don't have goals. I have a goal to get on a train tomorrow and go to London to, XYZ. So, there are goals, small goals and big goals. We take the steps on the earthly dimension, on the three-dimensional reality of a body moving through the world. We have to have an idea of where we're going, or what we're doing next, or what step is being taken, if we need to. Otherwise, we'd be kind of just floating around, bumping into each other or something. So yes, of course. And when it comes to setting up a business or a project or something, then of course we have to have a vision of where it's going and what we want to do with it and all of this. That's all fine. But yes, I think you hit the nail on the head. Having a tight or very set agenda for the outcome pulls you into the suffering of duality. Do it without an agenda. Be present with it without an agenda, in the moment, in the moment, in the moment, in the moment. And then what you find is that, I'm going to say God moves you. The Spirit moves you. You can experience that as passion, as joy, as a deep inner impulse. It moves you. Truth moves you. And then you become the vehicle through which truth or consciousness expresses itself. And then there's no separation. There's no separation between the spiritual and the human. They're one and the same.
Absolutely. And if you want to really, oh gosh, how am I going to put this in words? I suppose that then one of the next steps for me would be as well, and for others, would be always follow your intuition, because that will lead you to where you need to be next.
Yes, intuition is an indicator that you are moving from an inner dimension rather than from the conditioned mind.
Yes, and it always seems, for those who use it, it always seems to lead them to the best place.
Yes, there's an alignment that happens, an inner and outer alignment. There's always a rightness in that.
Absolutely. And we haven't, I don't think, as well, spoken about not embracing pain as a friend. Now, there's so many great things that you've spoken about today. Really, really, really great stuff. And I want to get back to the New Age movement. You mentioned something really interesting, but just pain. I know this is a big subject, and I know we haven't got a lot of time. But this reality that we're talking about does not... we're not talking about walking away from pain. Pain is a natural process of being here. So we're not talking about experiencing a life of, well, if it's going to hurt, I'm not interested, or, we should only look at the positive.
No, whatever is here is to be met. That doesn't mean that we have to live a life of pain. The beauty and the grace of it all is that when we are operating from an inner dimension of beingness in the way that we've described and talked about on this whole conversation, that actually what used to be experienced as pain and made us retract or attempt to protect ourselves is actually no longer really experienced in the same way. That's what I mean by it's nothing changes and everything changes. Yeah, pain may happen. Difficult situations may happen. Something may hurt, whether that's the loss of a loved one or, personal illness or accident. Of course, that's the kind of pain that we may continue to experience because that's life. But because we are operating as openness, there's a permeability that allows that experience of pain to move through you very quickly. It's like it moves through and doesn't stick along the way. The real suffering of life is when pain sticks. And what I mean by sticking is what I described earlier about having a story. If something painful happens and then a story wraps itself around that pain, that experience, like it shouldn't have happened to me, poor me, why does it always happen to me, or life is terrible, or God is terrible, or whatever, then that sticks and that becomes your story. And you carry that around like a heavy burden, or like a sort of sack of darkness. But when you are open and permeable as consciousness, then something difficult may happen, a turbulence, a storm, something comes, a loss, whatever, and it actually moves through you very quickly. There's no story for it to stick to. That makes life a very different experience. It also makes you fearless. It brings fearlessness, humility, compassion, maturity, grace, freedom.
It does indeed. And if if someone was going to attack you, we're not saying in that sense as well that we're not going to defend ourselves and we're going to, go to that stillness moment. But it's amazing. No, I will say this as well, that sometimes we have to stand up for ourselves as well. There are times when we have to stand up for ourselves. It's not about being some sort of, spiritual guru that's, just all about love and everything. There are times when life will, puts you in situations where you have to sort things out. But there is also the way that you can with this type of teaching as well, and this way of looking at life, you can just let it go and dissolve it after it's happened as well.
Yes, love doesn't have a particular way of responding. Love isn't about doing nothing or not responding or not protecting yourself or not fighting back. Love includes all of it. It's about where that comes from.
Yeah.
It's about whether that arises out of the silence of being or the stillness of being, in which case it is right action, it is love in action.
Yeah.
We might be moved. Love's natural impulse might be to save that dog or child that's just about to be hit by a car. It's not about sitting back and watching it all happen in some kind of blissful dream. Or whatever it might be. It might be if, somebody's attacking you and about to put, a knife in you or punch you, or there's a war, or who knows what happens, that you do say stop or whatever it is you have to do.
Well, you've come
or it might not. Yeah, it's like being a martial artist. Yeah. You're poised in stillness. You're poised in silence. And out of that arises love in action. You're not flapping around in the drama of it, which has a very different outcome. And each person has to find their own way. So you can't say you have to do it like this or have to do it like that. There's no right way of doing it. The only right way of doing it is your inner guidance.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, there are those with pain from families who have not forgiven things, or we hold on from misunderstandings, whatever it may be. Issues build up in all sorts of different ways, don't they? And some people are just not ready to forgive, are they? Or to forgive and to go into just letting things be, and going into the space of surrender. They're not able to do it.
Yeah, forgiveness is the most powerful, transformative, healing key, if you like, for us personally and collectively. And of course, as you say, if somebody's not ready, they're not ready. We can't impose. We can only be that ourselves. You can only be a light unto yourself. And being a light unto yourself means that you're a light unto the world. And you can't foist that light on anyone, but that light can draw towards it the seed of light that is not quite yet awake in others. And that's nothing that we can do on a personal level. We can only be that.
In one quote in your book, and this is, I've heard this before when we talk about life's a mirror, but you've got this: if we truly understood that the outer world is a reflection of our inner world, we would realize how absolutely powerful we are.
Yes, and I think that refers to what I've just been talking about being the light. And I'm also referring to the mass tendency to give power to the world as is expressed or manifested through financial, economics and science and religion and everything that the world represents, and then we are victims of that. And in some ways there's a truth in that, and there is a power out there of the world that has a grip on humanity currently, but it doesn't serve us to be a victim of that.
No.
Because that world, that external power that we see is a reflection rather of our inner disempowerment.
Yeah.
So it's not about rising up to face that power from the same platform as that power, because as an individual we can't. But it is about knowing that the greatest power we have is to know who we are. And that sounds like a cop-out, and it sounds like a new ageism, but it isn't.
No, this work is almost like the best of atheism, in a sense of surrender, right? Meets the idea of that we are as a human being awareness, and when the self-awareness makes us human, and that self-awareness is the consciousness, and it sort of eliminates all the other sort of stuff as well. It's very beautiful in its essence of teaching. I've got two more quotes, and then I know we've both we're well over time right now, but one other quote is we've touched this, but it just stood out to me in the book. The expectation that God's spirit enlightenment will give us perfect health, wealth, or happiness is a fantasy that prevents us from knowing the truth of this moment. For true freedom, the bubble of bliss has to be burst. So true.
Yes, and I think we've spoken about that throughout this conversation.
Of course, it's nice just to be but you've got all this in the book, and it's not like I meant to take that quote then expand on it. I was going to mention that later on, but we have mentioned it. And then just one final thing as well, one final quote here: no amount of fighting to save the whales or singing for world peace will ultimately create a harmonious humanity if we are still divided within. If you have not fully embraced yourself, then how can you fully embrace the world? Now, that's very interesting, that is, because there's many of us, isn't there, that want to change the world, yet we're not prepared to change ourselves.
Yeah, and that little quote or phrase is pointing to. And goodness, this is a whole conversation. In fact, most of it revolves around this very thing, but we'll touch on it very briefly here, is that if you are divided within, if you come from a place of division, and what I mean by that is that you are still seeing something outside of you as the enemy, then you are that's not powerful. Yeah, that's not where your true power lies. True power lies in operating from wholeness, from non-division within. And B, you are only adding to the division in the world. So you can't fight the world. Yeah. So fighting the world creates more fighting. And the anger, if there is anger, there is rage, there is injustice. I'm not saying they should not be felt and experienced, because that's part of the human experience, is to feel the injustice of the world, is to feel the rage of the devastation of the planet and the greed and the corruption. Yes. But don't act from that place. Go deeper than that. Feel it, meet it, let it resolve and dissolve in forgiveness. Not forgiveness for the actions that are being done, but for the ignorance and the inner division from which those actions come from. And from that place, then you can act, then you can move, then you can speak, then you can do, and then you come from a place of wholeness or oneness. And that's much more powerful and much more true.
Beautifully said. And you spoke earlier on about, how some people in the New Age movement, think that we're going to, well, not think, but, that there's the potential that we're already in a new Earth, which could be true in a sense, that we have shifted consciousness, but this idea more not really that, not, I suppose we're not talking about that. It's more the case of really that that where we're going is the ultimate goal, is the bliss, is the paradise in a sense of going back home or going to heaven or however you want to personify it. As you would say, that's missing the point of being in the moment now, right? I mean, I said to myself a few weeks ago, well, it sort of came to me as a download, but I hate that word, but I think that's what it was. But that's one way of saying what it could, potential of what it could be. The idea came to me that this is a that we're experiencing now. It is a life review, yeah, or this isn't the true nature of where we potentially think we are, or or where we go to is not even the understanding of what we have out there in books is not even close to it. Yeah, we don't understand that framework. But coming back to this moment now, what really matters is that we're here now, and we chose to be here. And even if we don't want to accept that, we are here, so let's make it the best it can be.
Yeah, it's about discovering that you're already home.
Yeah, well, that's why I mentioned. I mean, I know you may not go down that path, but it came to that. Something that came to me that this is a life review. This is one of my life reviews. I'm getting the chance to relive it again, to correct something that I didn't get a chance to before. Now, whether that's just me losing the plot and becoming a bit insane, I don't know. But that's what came to me. Does it matter? Well, it was interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't possibly know if that's true.
I don't know neither. It's just what came to me.
And as you say, I don't know if it matters. It gives meaning. It may give a meaning to the life that's being lived now and all of that. And that's fine. And but my invitation would be is don't cling to that as a truth. Because we don't know.
No.
And there's no freedom in clinging to that.
No, but I suppose it was my personal thing that happened to me. So it was like, oh, that's interesting.
And if it has meaning to you and it's helpful to you in unraveling some of the sticking places.
well, here's something else that came to me.
Everything can support that. Absolutely.
Here's something else that came to me. That's what came to me. That we are already in the everything. When we talk about crossing over to go home, as though it's something outside of this universe, it's already within us now.
Yes, and I think that's what I'm alluding to when I say we're already home. It's like dying. It's dying now. Die to everything that you think you are. Die into this moment.
Have we already died and we're here doing something else? We think we're going on to where we go when we die, but maybe we've already crossed. I don't know. When you really consider that what we've been told, that may not be what it is.
No, I mean, death is a discovery, just as life is a discovery.
It really is. What would you say is the most important message of your work?
Give yourself to what is true in you. Give yourself wholeheartedly to the deepest, innermost truth in you, not the truth of the mind or the belief structure. Listen to silence from silence. Now, I don't know if that's my core message, but that's what comes now.
Beautiful. Well, I can hear the birds in the background. They've got the right idea as well. Now, how can people get in contact with yourself? Because people are going to watch this and they're going to feel very empowered on what you're saying. Now, I know you do teachings, so your website's been going up on the screen all the time along with your books, but let's just give your website just in case this is a podcast as well in the future.
Yes, my website is www.amodama.com, AMODAMAA.com, and there's an events page, a calendar page. I have a series of talks coming up in the UK, London and elsewhere over the next 2 months, May and June, and a few other events which are on the calendar. It gets constantly updated. Otherwise, you can join my newsletter for updates, and you can join my Facebook page, which is very active, and I upload videos. My main teaching comes through talks, videos. I also offer retreats, but there aren't any in the UK right now, and so on.
Okay, so if people want to physically be with you in your presence, then there are ways of seeing what events are on there, and they can contact you as well.
Yeah, there's a contact page. I do answer my emails quite quickly. I'm also available for private sessions, but they're very limited, and so that would be by confirmation. I would need to have a little bit of background and what the question is, and then it depends on my schedule.
Okay,
but there's information on my website about that as well.
No, absolutely. Well, from starting this interview with a bit of apprehension on myself, I'll be honest, of which way to approach this, to leaving this interview with saying that this has been most recently one of my favourites.
That's fantastic, Kevin, and I really enjoyed the conversation. It's been very open, I think, and inquiring, which is exactly what this is all about. And I think it was beautiful. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for letting me go over time, and I wish you all the best with everything you're doing. Thank you very much.
Okay, then.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.